Welcome back to the show. Today's topic: do men communicate? Or communication is key. So, I want to bring up or talk about communication just because it can't be expressed enough or talked about enough. A quick Google search or internet search or even YouTube search, you could just type in and start typing in do men communicate, and you would just see the results that come back in every one of those platforms. And usually, yes, it's from women that, oh, why can't men communicate, or do men communicate at all, or how can I get my husband or man to communicate, right? So women tend to do this to because we don't overall don't communicate. Now, to be fair, it's more of an older generation. Now, I'm talking about 35 to 45 and up, or from 35 and up. It's kind of that environment where, or that scenario, for the most part, I would say for the majority of them, where those guys 35 and up, and being 35 might be a little bit generous. We might have to bump that through 40, but I'm being a little bit optimistic, a little bit, that the numbers aren't as set as they seem to be. So we'll say 35 and up that do have a hard time communicating. The numbers show that in depression, the medication among men, the suicide rate among men, those numbers can correlate that. I mean, more men. I mean, there was a podcast by Joe Rogan where he had a guy on there where he brought up the point that a lot of men, as they grow older, in age, in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, are loners, don't have friends, don't never develop the way to communicate or to open up, to bond to people enough to have long lasting bonding friendships that can lead to fruitful, healthy, positive lives. And it ends up leading them towards depression, towards just having a lonely life, or not a fruitful life as they would like. So, and why is that? Because we don't communicate. It's something that is lost in us. So I think that the more we say it's okay for that generation from the 35s and up, the quicker we could get that message across and give those men those outlets, the more healthier of a mind set hopefully we can develop. If you're sitting under 35, you're pretty open with communication, and you guys are communicating too much, right? Where women are being turned off by that, where the just the female, I'm opposite sex, just females in general find that off-putting. And even some of these 20 something couples where the guy shares too much and communicates too much, the woman starts seeing him in a female or in a negative mindset, which causes infidelity, which causes the wandering eye syndrome, which leads to a plethora of other, bad signs, I guess, that it could lead to if you over communicate. So it has to be a nice balance between what and how much you communicate, because obviously, if you don't communicate a lot like the older generation does, or older 35, it could lead to several problems later on in life. But if you overshare, it could cause you problems now, or even now and in your immediate future. Maybe not 10, 20 years down the line, but maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years down the line, where your marriage ends or your relationship ends, or, in all aspects, men should communicate better. Yeah, and even in jobs, because you don't communicate something, you might, lose it. So communication with words is awesome, right? It's great. It's something that we should all do. And again, I just said it's important for men over 35 to be able to communicate and get whatever it is across. And it's something that you hear preached through, self-help, self-development, gurus and people trying to help people out. You hear that about communication, 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 and that's great. And again, not breaking any ground here with what I'm about to say, but the communication that is missed by most, or the underlying message of communication in the self-betterment or in whatever kind of communication that you want to have, is that you first have to be able to have communication with yourself. And some might think, well, that's obvious. And to others, it might not be so obvious. Like, might be, what do you mean communication with myself? So before you know what to communicate to someone else or to anyone else, you have to first communicate what to yourself, what you want, what you need, what you desire, what you're expecting. Once you do that and communicate that clearly to you, and it starts processing in your mind, then you have the dignity to express it to other people and say, this is what I have communicated to myself, and this is what I'm communicating to you, to be able to fall in line, not in line, but to at least see if you want to still mess with this, see if you still want to go along with this. Obviously, in a professional standpoint, it might be a little different. It might be maybe not so much communicating with yourself, because at this point you're submitting to the job and you kind of have to do whatever you have to do to keep that job. But even in that, in your moral compass, in the way you go through life, you still have to communicate some boundaries at work. Like if your supervisor is screaming at you, you have to have that boundary and communicate it that it has to stop, and then have the strength that if it doesn't stop, you walk away. You'll be able to look for other opportunities of employment, if you will. So that's the part where we need to be able to focus on and say, well, what is it that I want to have? And how can I communicate that to myself? So if you're in a relationship and you value honesty, you have to be honest yourself first. You have to be honest in your actions. That way you communicate through your actions, through your words, and through who you are. Hey, I honor honesty. And then, obviously, it's going to be projected by your actions, not even your words, just the way you go around your morning and how you go about your daily life. And then through your words, you're going to back it up and say, yeah, this is what it is. I want honesty. I want someone that's going to be, completely 100% honest with me. And if it's not, then guess what? It's a boundary cross. Something that I can't tolerate. Something that we can't, there's no more, fixing this. There has to be a crossing point. So when we're doing this, we have to remember that it can't be, and I know I'm focusing in love life for the most part, but I've brought up relationships, but it's communication in everything in ourselves. And that's the only way that we're going to elevate our lives, that we're going to change and hopefully affect change or have some kind of change when we communicate to ourselves what we want, what we like, what we don't like, what we don't want, where we lack and where we are great, getting down to those kind of questions and communicating clearly, those things. That's when communication turns to understanding. And that's the switch we want to make. Because it's great, that, communication is awesome, but it has to lead to an understanding. And once you do that, because that's ultimately what you want obviously, when you communicate to a partner, when you communicate just to someone else, period, not even a female, you want to have an understanding after that communication has been established or has been had, not even established, has been had. And by communication, I do mean communication from me to you and communication from you to me. And then we settle on an understanding, whether it be the end of something or the beginning of something or a compromise of. That's all it is. But the problem with most men is that we don't communicate to ourselves first. We internalize everything. We think about everything. We take the blame for everything. We find the solutions for everything. We do everything by ourselves except communicate to ourselves all of that stuff. Like I said, our likes, what we want, what we expect, what we don't expect. Just because you don't want to rock the boat, because you don't want to do this, it's not an excuse to not communicate with yourself. And then once you communicate with yourself and figure out what you want, what you need, and how to go about whatever it is that you need to get, like, want, go after, and communicate that, and then come to some sort of agreement, understanding with yourself, that process will never be repeated on the outside form because it's not genuine. You're not coming from a place of honesty, of where are in alignment, because when everything's aligned, that's when you have no, like I've said plenty of times, no ulterior motives, no kind of deceitful way that anyone could do it, because you're working from a place of honesty. You're working from a place of wholeheartedness, where you're not trying to deceive anybody, but you know your standards, you know your worth. You're not being unrealistic. You're being as genuine as you can be, so that people can take it or leave it. And of course, like everything, some people take that term too far. You take it or leave it, and live very weird, unhealthy lifestyles. And not even judging anything, but it's just, it is what it is. But the point of all communication is to land on an understanding where both parties can then react to that and move accordingly. I know I went long-winded, but the quicker you get to that part where you guys could understand, hey, I want this, I like that, and the quicker you decide, yes, I want to continue with this, and no, I don't want to continue with this. But as long as everything is communicated with, first, again, as long as you're communicating what is true to you, not fake, not because she looks good, not because it's the money that you want, not because of, all these other reasons, but it's because it's true to you. Once you do that, then your subconscious understands it, and everything else, then your physical body starts to act on it. Then, and only then, once all of that's aligned, your mind, your body, your spirit, your soul, that's when you can start communicating what you want, what you need to other people, for that in the physical form becomes the understanding. And then you see how that becomes a much more healthy way to go about it. But it's alien to a lot of people because people don't want to look at it that way. They think of communication like, I tell you I don't like black, but I can't tell you, hey, I like black, but maybe if we mix it in this way, maybe you'll like it. No, you have such a black and white look at it. No, I don't like black. I don't want black around me, so don't bring black around me, or whatever. Maybe the wrong word to use nowadays is black, so maybe I should take that back. But I'm not, all jokes aside, that's the kind of thing where we're communicating just because we think we should communicate that, because culture, because religion, because I don't want to be looked at some kind of way. When you go about in a deceitful way, guess what you're communicating? You're a liar. You're not authentic. You're being fake. And guess what? The universe rewards you. What's the energy that you're putting off? You're being deceitful. You're being ungenuine. So guess what? You've heard it plenty times, or you've heard it. You've heard it plenty of times everywhere else. Track attracts like. Like attracts like is what like attracts like. And when you're attracting similar energy, deceitful, lying and not being authentic, that's what you get, put back at you. So whether you believe in energy, you don't have to. It's just the way it works. Is it always like that? Nope. Because, like everything, there's outliers, there's randomness, there's a lot of variables that give the false illusion now. And because we live in an age where everything's fast in your face, we believe that everything is like that. Like, I communicate this, and because I communicate, even though it doesn't serve anything, I never thought past this, momentary gratification, but because I'm supposed to, care about this, this is what I'm communicating. But it's not true to you. If it's not true to you, I could care less how much someone tells you that it's something that needs to be and something that wants to be. That's when you live a fake life. And I get it. Everyone doesn't want to be labeled, doesn't want to be, a certain way, but it is what it is. It has to be communicated with your truest self. And the world's not going to like it, but it has to be aligned in a personal way. And we can't look at it in an overall. It has to be one person at a time, has to look in themselves and say, this is specific to me. And how can I communicate what's specific to me, that only me that's lived through it in my eyes, that can communicate with myself what is good to me, what is not good to me, what is, amazing, not amazing, what I could tolerate, what I won't tolerate. And once you come to an understanding after you communicated with that, again, that's the only time when you can start telling, communicating your wants and all that other stuff, like I said, to another person, and then let them understand, and then come into that healthy zone where only that kind of communication can happen. Only through communication that leads to understanding. And if we understand ourselves, and the only thing that, the only thing that comes, out of communication is understanding, then it's a great thing. If we could come to understand ourselves through communicating with ourselves, trust me, it's the best thing you're going to do, because it's only going to lead to just you understanding yourselves. And that's when you hear these stuff that, a lot of other, people just going through life. No one of importance, just when people say, oh, I understand this. I see things clearer now. Once I started to define stuff, once I started to be okay with knowing that this is what I like, and attach it to whatever it is to you. Make sure, obviously, it's leading you to a better person of yourself, at some point. But we're all humans. I get it, trying to use some morals and ethics and standards in everything you do. Hopefully, it's a broader message. But before we ever even get to that, before you can even start to get to that, or even see a direction to lead to that, is you have to communicate with yourself in every aspect in your life. And by this time, you guys should know that every aspect, the way I say it, is, your love life, your friends, families, and acquaintances, and your professional life. You have to evaluate those things. Of course, if there's a lot more, you get a lot more detail, but you have to communicate yourself in how you want to live your life with these people. Obviously, your professional life, communicating what you want for yourself, what is your vision for yourself, and then being able to have the friends, families, and relationships in your surroundings. So once you communicate that those parts all around you are all in unison in that leading of. I'm not talking about making thousands and millions of dollars, into having a relationships, or to having long lasting relationships, where we see the curve of depression among men that end up living and dying alone at an older age. So we won't see this as much. So we have longer lasting bonds. that are going to keep a lot of our older generation and getting older generation, 35 can't stay 35, they move up. So as we're moving up, the broader point is making connections, making friends, being able to curb the suicide rate in older gentlemen, and being able to cure the fact that a lot of men are living in homes, in apartments, in senior citizen homes, in nursery homes, alone, depressed, in a state because they didn't communicate what they wanted to themselves, and then they didn't communicate to the world what they wanted. They kept it all inside, and at the end of the day, it cost them friendships. And when you hear these sad stories from these older generations as they're ready to pass on to the next life, you hear some of those regrets. Yes, you hear the normals. Oh, I regret not spending time with, my family. I regret not going after my dreams. A lot of men go, I regret I didn't make more friends. I regret I didn't keep in contact with my high school buddies. I regret not being able to, that I lost track with, my old military friends. And it's something that it's super sad to hear. And it's a very serious problem among men that needs to be addressed. And we need shows to tell men it's okay to communicate. It's okay to tell the world what you want, and a lot of men don't have that problem. But before we can communicate in a healthy way, the only way we're going to communicate in a healthy way is to communicate with ourselves. And I get it when I say, if I would say get in touch with yourself, that's just the most off-putting thing to any older gentleman. But we have to communicate with each other. We have to communicate with ourselves, sorry. We got to communicate to us, to our subconscious, everything that we want, desire, so that it's aligned. We know we're focused. And then once we have that, then we move forward. So I hope you guys found this informative. I hope I made you guys think. Share the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Until next time.